Karen slammed her car door, her face flushed with rage. How dare that idiot park so close to her? Glaring at the offending vehicle, she stomped over and began furiously scratching the pristine paintwork, snarling under her breath. This is what you get for being a selfish jerk and taking up 2 spots. She gouged deep gashes into the side panel, relishing the screeching sound of metal against metal. Once satisfied with the damage, Karen yanked open her purse and scribbled a note on a scrap of paper. "You deserve this, you entitled piece of garbage," she spat, shoving the paper under the car's windshield wiper. Stepping back, Karen surveyed her handiwork, a twisted smile playing on her lips. That'll teach that moron a lesson about respecting other people's property. Tucking her car keys back into her pocket, she turned and marched towards the mall entrance, her head held high. What she didn't know was that the entire incident had been captured on the security camera mounted on a lamp post overhead. The footage clearly showed her face as she vandalized the car, the anger and entitlement etched across her features. Inside the mall, Karen breezed through the perfume counters, ignoring the sales assistant's polite greetings. She had a specific mission in mind: a new designer handbag to replace the one that had been ruined when she spilled her coffee that morning. Nothing was going to ruin her day. Striding up to the counter, she fixed the sales associate with an imperious stare. "I need to see your latest Prada collection. I'm looking for a new bag." The young woman smiled nervously. "Of course, ma'am. Right this way." She led Karen to the display, pulling out several options. Karen's critical eye swept over the bags, her lips pursing in displeasure. "These all look dreadful. Don't you have anything decent?" she snapped. The sales associate's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, ma'am. These are our latest arrivals. Perhaps you'd like to try a different style." Huffing in annoyance, Karen glared at the poor girl. "Fine. Just get me the most expensive one you have. I don't have time for this nonsense." Sensing the growing tension, the sales associate quickly retrieved the most costly Prada bag and placed it gingerly on the counter. "Here you are, ma'am. This is our top-of-the-line model." Without a word, Karen snatched up the bag and marched towards the cashier, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She barely acknowledged the cashier as she swiped her credit card, impatiently tapping her foot. "Have a nice day," the cashier mumbled, handing her the receipt. "Whatever," Karen muttered, already striding towards the exit, her new prized possession in hand. As Karen exited the mall, her mood considerably brighter thanks to her new Prada bag, she was blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding in the parking lot. The owner of the scratched car, a middle-aged man named Roger, had returned to his vehicle and immediately noticed the damage. His face twisted in shock and disbelief as he examined the deep gouges in the paint. "What the?" he exclaimed, running his fingers over the ruined surface. Spotting the note under the wiper, he snatched it up and read the scathing message. "You deserve this, you entitled piece of garbage." Rage bubbled up inside him, his hands trembling with fury. Who the hell would do this? He growled, glancing around the parking lot for any clues. That's when he noticed the security camera mounted on a lamppost, its red light blinking ominously. Rushing over, he craned his neck to get a better view. Maybe, just maybe, it had captured the vandal in the act. Hastily pulling out his phone, Roger called the mall's security office, his voice terse and demanding. "I need to speak to your manager immediately. Someone has vandalized my car, and I have it all on camera." Within minutes, the mall's head of security, a burly ex-cop named Frank, arrived on the scene. Listening to Roger's account, he quickly reviewed the security footage, his frown deepening with each passing second. "Well, I'll be damned," Frank muttered, pausing the video and zooming in on the woman's face. "We've got a clear shot of her. Let me make a copy of this for the police." Roger's eyes widened. "The police? You're going to report this?" Frank nodded grimly. "Absolutely. Destruction of property is a serious offense, and we take it very seriously here. I'll have my team review the footage to see if we can identify the woman. In the meantime, I suggest you file a report with the authorities." Clutching the printout of the vandal's face, Roger felt a grim sense of satisfaction. "Oh, I'll do that. All right. This isn't the last she's heard of me." As Frank strode back towards the security office, Roger stared down at the damning evidence, his resolve hardening. This woman was going to pay for her entitled and destructive behavior. One way or another, he was going to make sure of it. Karen hummed contentedly as she drove home, her new Prada bag sitting proudly on the passenger seat. The initial burst of rage had faded, and she felt a sense of satisfaction at having put that inconsiderate jerk in his place. "That'll teach him to park like an ashbowl," she muttered, smiling to herself. As far as she was concerned, the matter was closed. No one would ever know it was her. Little did she know, the events at the mall were about to catch up with her in a big way. The following day, Karen's phone rang, the unfamiliar number causing her to furrow her brow in confusion. Reluctantly, she answered. "Hello. Is this Karen Wilkins?" a gruff voice asked. "Yes, this is she. Who is this?" "This is Officer Johnson from the Westwood Police Department. I'm calling in regards to an incident that occurred at the Westwood Mall yesterday. Are you aware of any vandalism to a vehicle in the parking lot?" Karen's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a surge of panic. "No, I'm not aware of any vandalism. What's this about?" "Well, ma'am, we've received a report of a car that was scratched, and the security footage clearly shows you as the perpetrator." The officer's tone was stern, leaving no room for argument. Karen's mouth went dry, and she struggled to find the right words. "That's impossible. I wasn't even at the mall yesterday," she lied, her voice wavering. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come down to the station to answer a few questions. The evidence against you is quite substantial." Panic rising, Karen frantically tried to come up with an excuse. I'm not feeling well right now. Can we do this another time?" "I'm afraid that's not possible, ma'am. This is a serious matter, and we need to get to the bottom of it as soon as possible. I'll be sending an officer to your residence to escort you to the station. I suggest you cooperate fully." Before Karen could protest further, the line went dead. She stared at her phone, her hands trembling. This couldn't be happening. How could she have been caught? Frantically, she paced her living room, her mind racing. She had to come up with a plan, some way to get out of this. There was no way she was going to let a few scratches on some car ruin her life. Determined to avoid the consequences of her actions, Karen began to scheme, her sense of entitlement overriding any sense of remorse or responsibility. She was going to do whatever it took to avoid facing justice for her entitled and destructive behavior. As the police officer knocked on her front door, Karen's mind raced with desperate ideas. She couldn't let them take her in for questioning. There was no way she was going to take responsibility for her actions. Glancing around her living room, Karen's eyes landed on a half-empty bottle of wine. Perfect. Quickly, she poured the contents down the sink and then splashed some of the remaining liquid on her clothes and hair, disheveling her appearance. Just as the officer knocked again, Karen flung open the door, her eyes red-rimmed and her voice shaky. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. I've been so upset. I've been drinking all afternoon." The officer eyed her warily. "Ma'am, are you intoxicated?" Karen nodded emphatically, swaying slightly. Yes, I'm afraid so. I don't know what came over me. Please, can we do this another time?" The officer hesitated, clearly unsure of how to proceed. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come down to the station and sober up. We need to discuss the vandalism incident." No, you don't understand," Karen cried, her voice rising in pitch. "I'm in no condition to go anywhere. Can't we just do this over the phone or something?" The officer frowned. "I'm afraid that's not possible, ma'am. This is a serious matter, and we need to handle it properly." Karen's mind raced as she desperately tried to think of another excuse. Well, what about my medical condition? I have a heart condition, and the stress of all this could be dangerous for me. The officer sighed, rubbing his temple. Ma'am, if that's the case, I can call an ambulance to have you checked out. But you'll still need to come in for questioning once you're cleared medically. Panic rising, Karen knew she was running out of options. Please, officer, can't we just forget about this? I promised it won't happen again. I'll pay for the damages or whatever you want. Just don't arrest me. The officer's expression hardened. Ma'am, I'm afraid I can't do that. Destruction of property is a serious crime, and you'll need to face the consequences. Sensing that her pleas were falling on deaf ears, Karen resorted to her final tactic, tears. Letting out a sob, she collapsed against the doorframe, clutching the officer's sleeve. Please, you don't understand. My life will be ruined if you arrest me. I'll lose my job, my home, everything. I can't go to jail. The officer's expression softened slightly, and he hesitated. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but... Seizing the opportunity, Karen interrupted him, her voice thick with desperation. Officer, please, I'm begging you. Isn't there some way we can make this go away? I'll do anything, I swear. The officer's brow furrowed as he considered her plea. Karen held her breath, praying that her performance had been convincing enough to sway him. The officer's expression softened as he watched Karen collapse against the doorframe, her eyes brimming with tears. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the distressed woman. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but destruction of property is a serious offense, he said, his voice gentler than before. I really can't just let this go, no matter what you offer. Karen's grip on his sleeve tightened, and she gazed up at him pleadingly. Please, officer, you have to understand. My life will be ruined if I get arrested. I'll lose everything. My job, my home, everything I've worked for. Isn't there some way we can make this go away? The officer sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, I suppose there might be one option, but it's not something I can officially endorse. Karen's eyes widened with hope. Anything? I'll do anything. Just please, don't arrest me. The officer glanced around quickly, making sure no one was watching. All right, listen up, and listen good. If you can make a substantial donation to the local charity foundation, I might be able to persuade the victim to drop the charges. That's the best I can do without breaking protocol. Karen's face lit up with relief, and she nodded eagerly. Yes, of course. How much do I need to donate? Let's say $5,000 should do the trick, the officer replied, his voice low. But this is strictly off the record, you understand. I can't be seen playing favorites or accepting bribes. Karen didn't even hesitate. Done. I'll have the money transferred to the charity immediately. Thank you, officer. Thank you so much. The officer held up a hand. Now hold on. I still need to take you down to the station to get your official statement. Can't skip that part, I'm afraid. Karen's face fell, but she quickly plastered on a grateful smile. Of course. Anything you need, officer. I'm just so relieved we could work this out. As the officer escorted Karen to his patrol car, she couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. Her entitled behavior had once again paid off, and she had managed to weasel her way out of the consequences. The money was a small price to pay for avoiding the humiliation of an arrest and potential jail time. Little did she know, however, that her actions were being closely monitored, and the fallout from her blatant disregard for the law was about to catch up with her in a way she could never have imagined. As Karen sat in the back of the patrol car, her mind raced with a mixture of relief and unease. While she had managed to avoid a direct arrest, the knowledge that she had bribed a police officer weighed heavily on her conscience. What if someone found out? The thought of the scandal and potential legal repercussions made her stomach churn. Still, she tried to push those concerns aside, focusing instead on the fact that she had once again avoided accountability for her actions. When they arrived at the police station, the officer ushered Karen inside and led her to a small interview room. She sat down, fidgeting nervously as he retrieved a notepad and pen. "All right, Ms. Wilkins, let's go over the events of yesterday again. I need your full cooperation, understand?" Karen nodded, her heart pounding. "Of course, officer. I'll tell you everything I know." The officer's gaze was unwavering as he began to ask his questions. "Now, you claimed you were at the mall yesterday. Is that correct?" "Why, yes, that's right," Karen stammered, her palms sweating. "And you have no knowledge of the vandalism that occurred to Mr. Johnson's vehicle?" "No, I don't. I'm as surprised as you are about all of this," Karen lied, her voice wavering. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Well, that's odd, because the security footage clearly shows you in the act of scratching his car." Karen's blood ran cold. What? That's impossible. I told you I wasn't. And then there's the note you left, which we have in our possession. The officer interrupted, his tone stern. "It seems pretty clear to me that you were the one responsible." Panic rising, Karen desperately tried to come up with another excuse. I don't know what you're talking about. Someone must have framed me or—" "Save it, Ms. Wilkins," the officer cut her off again. "We have more than enough evidence to charge you with destruction of property. Now, I suggest you start telling the truth, or this is going to get a whole lot worse for you." Karen's heart sank as the gravity of the situation finally dawned on her. All of her efforts to avoid accountability had been for naught. The police had her dead to rights, and there was no way she was going to talk her way out of this one. Realizing she had no choice but to confess, Karen's shoulders slumped in defeat. "All right, fine. I did it. I scratched that man's car. But he deserved it. That jerk was taking up 2 spots, and I was so mad. The officer held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want to hear your excuses, Ms. Wilkins. What you did was a crime, plain and simple. And now you're going to have to face the consequences." As the officer stepped out of the room to call for backup, Karen felt a growing sense of dread. Her sense of entitlement had finally caught up with her, and she knew that this time there would be no easy way out. The wait in the interview room felt like an eternity for Karen as she contemplated the gravity of her situation. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and regret, the reality of her actions finally sinking in. When the officer returned, he was accompanied by a stern-faced detective. Karen swallowed hard, bracing herself for the inevitable. "Ms. Wilkins, this is Detective Fernandez. He'll be handling the case from here on out," the officer announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. The detective pulled out a chair and sat down across from Karen, his gaze unwavering. "All right, Ms. Wilkins, let's start from the beginning. Tell me exactly what happened yesterday at the Westwood Mall." Karen hesitated, her mind racing to find a way out of this predicament. But deep down, she knew that lying any further would only make the situation worse. Sighing in resignation, she began to recount the events, her voice trembling. I was just so angry. That man had parked his car in 2 spots, and I felt disrespected. So, I scratched his car. I left a note telling him he deserved it." Detective Fernandez nodded, jotting down notes. "And you're fully aware that what you did constitutes a criminal offense, correct?" Karen nodded, her eyes downcast. "Yes, I know. I don't know what came over me. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I let my temper get the better of me." The detective leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Wilkins, I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've seen my fair share of entitled behavior. But what you did goes beyond that. It's a blatant disregard for the law and other people's property." Karen felt a lump forming in her throat, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. "I'm so sorry. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm willing to make amends. Please, Is there any way I can make this right? Detective Fernandez's brow furrowed. Well, that's the thing, Ms. Wilkins. Your actions have consequences, and simply apologizing isn't going to cut it. We have you on camera committing a crime, and the victim is understandably furious. Karen's heart sank. Does that mean I'm going to be arrested? The detective nodded gravely. I'm afraid so. We're going to have to take you into custody and process you. You'll likely face charges for destruction of property and vandalism. As the officers handcuffed Karen and led her out of the interview room, she felt a sense of overwhelming shame and regret. Her entitled behavior had finally caught up with her, and now she was facing the very consequences she had desperately tried to avoid. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings for Karen as she faced the consequences of her actions. Despite her attempts to argue her case and plead for leniency, the evidence against her was overwhelming, and the court showed no mercy. Karen was convicted on charges of destruction of property and sentenced to community service, as well as a hefty fine to cover the cost of repairing the damaged vehicle. The judge had made it clear that her sense of entitlement and disregard for the law would not be tolerated. As Karen completed her court-ordered community service, she found herself humbled and remorseful. Interacting with the less fortunate and seeing the impact of her actions firsthand had a profound effect on her. One day, as she was volunteering at a local soup kitchen, she recognized a familiar face. It was the man whose car she had vandalized, Roger. Bracing herself for his inevitable anger, Karen approached him hesitantly. Mr. Johnson, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry for what I did to your car. I was completely out of line, and I understand now how my actions affected you. To her surprise, Roger's expression softened. You know, when I first saw that note you left, I was furious. I couldn't believe someone would do that and just walk away. But seeing you here, serving the community, has made me realize that maybe there's hope for you yet. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. You forgive me. Roger nodded slowly. I can't say I'm completely over it, but I can see that you're genuinely remorseful. And I have to admit, the justice system did its job in holding you accountable. Maybe now you'll think twice before acting so entitled. Karen felt a weight lift from her shoulders as she listened to Roger's words. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I can't tell you how much this means to me. I promise I'm going to do my best to be a better person from now on. As Karen continued her community service, she found herself gaining a newfound appreciation for the struggles of others. Her sense of entitlement had been shattered, and she began to see the world through a different lens. In the end, the karma that had caught up with Karen proved to be a powerful catalyst for change. She emerged from the experience humbled, remorseful, and determined to make amends for her actions. And while the road ahead would not be an easy one, Karen knew that she had been given a second chance, one she was determined not to squander.